people in this room have had a loss of ability that has significantly impacted the rest of their lives? Okay, yeah. The rest of you are among the currently abled, which is a distinction I like very much, because our abilities can be very, very temporary when we think we have them going. I'm an artist, a musical artist, a storytelling artist. So I'm going to be using my art to begin to explore the collective wisdom that we have in this room, because my journey is my journey, but it's not your journey. And I'm guessing there's stories out here that other people would find very, very valuable to listen to. So I'm going to kind of do maybe a song, a story, and then we can talk and see what you guys have to say. So the title of this workshop is Who Am I Now? Grieving the Loss of Ability. So I'm going to start right off with that. Issues of identity. Tonight in grief I wander into this world of woe. While in my pain I ponder what to do, I don't know. A cruel fate upon me frowns, the trouble seems to be there is a feller in this town and he looks just like me. Oh, wouldn't I love to catch him wherever he may be. Oh, wouldn't I burst his pumpkin head, that feller that looks like me. Last week I went to see a girl to take her into town, when a woman tapped me on the shoulder. Hey, how's your wife, Old Brown? In vain I swore I was a single man, but married I longed to be. She called me a swindler and kicked me out for the feller that looked like me. Oh, wouldn't I love to catch him wherever he may be. Oh, wouldn't I burst his pumpkin head, that feller that looks like me. Last night I went out dancing, it was just to enjoy the sport, when a policeman took me by the arm. You're wanted down in court. You escaped us once, but this here time we'll see you don't get free. They took me to jail and locked me up for the feller that looked like me. Oh, wouldn't I love to catch him wherever he may be. Oh, wouldn't I burst his pumpkin head, that feller that looks like me. I was tried next day and found guilty and about to be taken down, when another policeman, he brought in the right criminal, Mr. Brown. They locked him up, they set me free. He was a sight to see. The ugliest feller I ever saw was the feller that looked like me. Wouldn't I love to catch him wherever he may be. Oh, wouldn't I burst his pumpkin head, that feller that looks like me. A new guy has moved into my bathroom mirror. I'm always a little startled when I see him because I'm used to the old guy. The old guy wore a beard. He let his hair grow long in a ponytail. This new guy not only shaves his face, sometimes he shaves his head. Plus he's got this weird snap thing embedded in the back of his skull. You can only see it when he turns his head. It's kind of creepy. I don't feel like I know him well enough to ask him about it. Truth is, I'm having a little trouble connecting with this new guy. He seems nice enough. He's always there every morning, every night. When I smile, he smiles back. It'd be so easy to start a conversation. I know how to do it. Hey, welcome to the neighborhood. Want to have a beer sometime? I just can't seem to work up the interest. I always walk away. And, you know, the next time it's even harder, and pretty soon it's just awkward. I miss the old guy. For one thing, we were both into music. Oh, all kinds. We spent hours listening to CDs, the radio. We both liked to dance. Sometimes we cha-cha the chores together, you know. Boogie the broom, do-si-do the dishes. Listening to each other's favorites playlists, checking out the new tunes online. Or we'd play tunes ourselves, you know, folk, classical, jazz. We liked pretty much everything. Other people would come over. We'd make a party of it. Oh, dance, sing along. The house was alive. It throbbed. Boy, we smiled a lot. We were actually in a couple of bands together. That was intense. The rehearsals, working out the arrangements, the group dynamics. We went on the road, stay in motels, other people's living rooms, eating badly, putting miles on the car, not getting enough exercise. Made a couple of recordings, did stupid stuff. We met a slew of people. Made a ton of friends. Collected a cajillion stories. Get me started, I could go on all night. There was a time we were standing on the street corner busking and this taxi drove up. A drunk fell out of the car and he offered us $20 to get in the cab with him. We did it. There was the festival that wanted us to play next to the helicopter rides. And a supper club where we accidentally crashed a funeral and tried to get the mourners to dance. I could go on all night. We did a lot of stuff, that guy and I. This new guy, I haven't heard too much music. I don't think it's his thing. That old guy and I, we've known each other so many years. We'd really gotten comfortable together. I could tell what he was thinking just by looking at him. He did the same for me. We knew each other's moods. We had a real groove going. He's gone now. Just like that. He disappeared. I heard he had a brain tumor, which kind of sucks because I would really miss him. Anybody have the experience of looking in a mirror and wondering who the heck that was? I see some nods there. Identity was a big issue for me. Who I am. I defined myself so much by my career, and losing abilities can really change our career trajectories, whatever those are. Many people lost their careers in there. Yeah. How hard was that? Yeah. For you? People we know at work, we lose them. It's a lot of grieving to do. It's not just the ability, it's the community. It's the relationships we have with those other people. Yeah, it's hard. Anybody want to share how you deal with that? What's worked for you getting through that?
I haven't dealt with it.
Yeah.
I just refuse to. Every time I lose something that I can't do anymore, I just cry and get frustrated.
Yeah.
I don't know how to give it up yet, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. For me, it was a revelation how many other people were going through the same thing that I was. That really actually sort of gobsmacked me. We go through our lives, I think, kind of assuming that everything's going to be okay. You know, we figure that if we work hard enough or are nice enough or or if we pray in the right way, that nothing bad's going to happen to us. And then it does. You don't quite know what to make of it. It's a tough one. You know, any thoughts back there about coping?
I think my best coping mechanism in the past couple of years is I've started with a group of physical therapy people that I go to, and just the community of the people who are there working so hard to keep what they have. They're all associated with, I have MS, so they're all kind of focused on the same thing of keeping what we have, not losing the ability even more.
Boy, you know, that was, I mean, I don't have MS, but it's finding that community of people. I remember that one of the most poignant moments for me was after I got my diagnosis and meeting a woman who had gone through the same thing that I had gone through, but 12 years earlier. And she was the first person that I was able to talk to who got what I was experiencing. And that made such a big difference to know that there was somebody out there who understood what that was like. And I'd like maybe plant the thought in all of your heads that you might be that person for somebody else as well. There are people who are just beginning to go through, just starting to walk on the roads that you have walked, who, you know, might really love to hear from you. You could be providing that for them, as well as other people providing it for you. Sometimes it's not so easy to see. I wrote this piece after I had an encounter in a store. It's called What Are the Odds? The odds of being injured by a toilet are 1 in 10,000. It is even less likely that any of us will be visiting the ER for a pogo stick related injury. That's 1 in 115,300. I invite you to contemplate the unlikelihood that swirls around us. I found the odds for all kinds of things on the internet. The odds of being killed by an asteroid impact are 1 in 74 million. The odds of being bitten by a shark, 1 in 11.5 million. The odds of being killed by an animal in Wisconsin, 1 in 1,122,230. The odds of a flipped nickel landing on its edge, 1 in 6,000. The odds of getting a double yolked egg, 1 in 1,000. The odds of the Cubs winning the 2019 World Series, 1 in 750. The odds of being left-handed, 1 in 10. The odds of getting a divorce, 1 in 2. Of course, our lives are not completely determined by chance. For example, I'd have to put myself in the vicinity of a pogo stick to be injured by one. Likewise, the shark. And you certainly don't flip a nickel 6,000 times by chance. Still, even with our best efforts, we wander through an impenetrable forest of happenstance every day of our lives. The odds of being born, 1 in 10 to the 2,685th power. I was born. Odds of a plane crashing, 1 in 11 million. The odds of finding a pearl in an oyster, 1 in 12,000. Odds of being born on a leap day, 1 in 1,461. The odds of a false positive on a Cologuard test, 1 in 10. The older I get, the harder I try to reduce the effect of chance on my life. It helps me think I'm in control. But I don't think I've really made much of a dent on the impact chance has on my life. And I suspect that all of our lives are way more determined by chance than any of us care to admit. We notice it most, I think, when the bad stuff happens. The odds of being hit by satellite debris falling from space, 1 in 21 trillion. The odds of being struck and killed by lightning, 1 in 174,426. The odds of developing an acoustic neuroma, 1 in 100,000. The odds of being involved in a fatal car crash in Wisconsin, 1 in 4,925. The odds of being shot, 1 in 300. The odds of losing a limb, 1 in 200. Odds of being audited by the IRS, 1 in 100. The odds of being sexually assaulted before the age of 8, 1 in 50. The odds of getting cancer, 1 in 2.5. The good stuff we either don't notice or we're inclined to attribute to our skill or our having earned it. Nobody likes to think how much luck might be involved in college acceptance or a job hiring, unless they haven't been accepted or hired. The odds of getting a perfect double NCAA bracket, 1 in 9 million, 1 in 9 quadrillion, 223 trillion, 372 billion, 36 million, 850, I even got that wrong. It keeps going. They're very high. I don't even know how to say that number. The odds of winning the Powerball, 1 in 290 million. The odds of being a movie star, 1 in 1,105,000. The odds of being dealt a royal flush, 1 in 649,740. The odds of having a child who is a genius. I think she's a genius. 1 in 250.
100%.
The odds of having hazel eyes, 1 in 20. I think that odds are actually much harder to calculate than the internet would have us believe. There are so many variables, so many ways for chance to touch our lives. Some of them are visible. What are the odds of surviving a bombing, of growing up in your home, of losing a limb, of having the wealth that you inherited? But it's not always easy to see the hand of chance. There was no way to tell that the woman who sold me balsamic vinegar today was left without peripheral vision after a high school bout with meningitis, or that my father-in-law was a Holocaust survivor, or that the guy that helped us move into our house had PTSD. What accidents, weather, economic conditions, wars, and traffic snarls have the people I chanced to be with come through? What gifts, advantages, and largesse have they received? Our lives are full of haphazard catastrophes and random blessings. What are the odds, for example, that I would find exactly the right obscure bolt for the trailer repair that I needed at my dad's neighbor's house the very night it broke down? What are the odds that I would stumble on my long-lost group therapy friend from Chicago at a co-op in Seattle, only to discover that he was living 2 blocks away from the home my wife and I had just moved into with a daughter the same age as ours? Or that I would run into the Kellogg Foundation grant reviewer in the middle of the Boundary Waters canoe area just as I was writing my environmental musical about shoreline protection? What are the odds of us meeting our spouses? Of living in our communities? Of having you as a friend? Of finding our jobs? What are the odds of knowing somebody more or less fortunate than ourselves? What are the odds of being lucky? What are the odds of living lives full of unlikely events? What are the odds of having the chance to share them with each other? I don't know about you, but when I got my 1 in 100,000 diagnosis, the thought ran through my mind more than once, why couldn't I have won the lottery instead? Why me? Anybody else run that little script through themselves? Why me? Anybody want to share how they answered that question?
Didn't.
I don't think.
You didn't answer. Yeah. How do you? How do you answer that question?
I don't think you do.
I'm sorry?
I don't think you do.
Just kind of leave it hanging there. I'm going to pick on Jim here because I'm imagining that as your role as a hospice chaplain, you confront that question quite often. What do you hear?
I do hear that quite a bit, Kevin. But I'm in that role. I do a lot of listening. I do a lot of trying to understand what people are going through, what it means to them, and I do less directing or less persuading than one might think in my role, because the role of a chaplain is sometimes a role of spiritual. We get into the spiritual realm of things, the religious realm of things, and just as often we don't get into the spiritual or religious realm of things. We just talk about how things are.
Yeah.
How things feel. What does that mean to you? And sometimes that question, why me, never really gets answered. Sometimes it sort of does. Sometimes when how your life stacks up, where a deck of cards gets reshuffled and you get dealt a new hand that isn't like your old hand, what's in it for me now is a big question.
Yeah.
And the only advice I try to offer would be, after listening to how this feels, how this is no good, what good is in the new hand?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything good left in this new hand? Is there something that's good? It's not like the old, but is there something good in the new hand you're dealt? Is there anything about being less able that's positive? Anything at all about how you connect to this community you talked about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything good about what happened that can somehow grow or flourish?
Yeah.
All I can do.
Yeah. So is that ringing true for other people? I know that for me, I'll be sharing a story a little bit later about this. One of the hard things about answering that question, which was, I think, an important question for me to answer, and still is an important question for me to answer, is that there's a way that I felt that by saying there was something good in what I was experiencing, I was justifying, like, all the bad stuff, as if, that was supposed to be equaled out. All this bad stuff happened to me, but at least I got this good stuff. But, somehow they were equal. I think it's been hard for me to accept the idea that there's no equation there. The bad stuff that hits you is never going to be equaled out. They aren't on opposite sides of the equation, they're on the same side of the equation. And by acknowledging, finding that good stuff, it just, gives me one more thing to help deal with all of the bad stuff. It make up for it, in any way. And that was a tough one for me to get to. Part of that was just being so darn angry about what had happened. And I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads about that, that anger. What do you do with it? Anybody got, yeah?
I went to a grieving group to get help.
Uh-huh.
When I got there, I let out some of my feelings. They said, you need to get help. So I got a good joke out of it.
Yeah. 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 Right.
So I thought there was an equation,
Yeah.
an algorithm. That, how do I deal with this? Okay, we should look it up in a book.
Yeah.
But I found out it doesn't work that way.
Right.
And my psychology training, try to say, well, we're going to have rewards in heaven for all this suffering, and I've been persecuted, and it's unfair, bad things happen to good people. Well, they do, but that's not popular way to
Doesn't-
talk.
It
You
doesn't.
go and you meet with people who say, you need help.
Yeah. From the very people you're looking for help from. Yeah. I was in a hospice with my mom, and I got handed a brochure, and I wish I could identify where this brochure came from, because it was so helpful for me at the time. And this brochure said, look, the person you are with, you're not going to fix them. They're dying. And you can't change that. The only thing you can do that might be helpful for them is to walk with them and be a witness to their experience. Be there for them as they're doing it. Not that you're trying to change them, but that you are making their road less lonely. It's a helpless feeling doing that. But that kind of helplessness they called heroic. I like that term, heroic helplessness. And when I talk to people who've been down dark roads, very often what we crave so much is that one person who will just not try to fix things, because frequently what we've got going is not fixable, but that will just walk with us, be that presence. And I bet there are people here who are with, looking at the two of you, I bet there's some heroic helplessness going on. Just being present can be one of the hardest things, and yet one of the most effective things to do. Anybody else have that experience of going to look for help and sort of not being able to find it? You get, I don't know, my experience was after I got the brain tumor, I must have just gotten, like way more handsome, because, people would start saying to me, "Oh, you look great." Yeah. Anybody else have that experience? It's like suddenly you're a really good-looking guy. Wow! Hey, Kevin, you look great.
Did you lose your memory?
I did not. I lost my hearing in this year. I lost my sense of balance. And I've got major fatigue issues. So yeah, no, I did not lose my memory. But I will say other people lost their memory. I in the process of going through the shave and stuff, I meet people I know well who don't recognize me.
Drastic change.
Yeah, it's drastic change. Yeah.
So what is acoustic neuropathy then?
An acoustic neuroma.
Neuroma.
Yeah. It's a tumor that, as my surgeon told me, if you're going to have a brain tumor, this is the very best kind of brain tumor for you.
Lucky.
And that was so helpful to hear that. It grows in, on a nerve that's between the brainstem and the inner ear. And in order to get at it, they've got to cut a hole in my skull, and they sort of shove the brain aside and work their way in there, and they snip a couple of nerves, so my balance nerve and my hearing nerve were both cut. And then they took the tumor out. It's a benign tumor, so it's not malignant. I really was quite lucky that way. And it really is, if you're going to have a brain tumor, this is definitely the best kind of brain tumor to have. I don't recommend brain tumors, so just generally, I would, if that's on your bucket list, cross it off right now, because it's wasn't much fun. So yeah, that's it's right in there on this side. And this little snap that I have, that I was talking about earlier, is part of a treatment for my deafness. In this ear, they have what's called a bone-anchored hearing aid. And that's a little hearing aid that I can snap onto that little snap. And it will take the sound from this side of my head and oscillate it into the bone so that this ear can hear through the bone the sound coming from this side of my head. So I'm still deaf in this right ear.
What about the balance? Can they hook that back up?
You know, what my doctor said to me was Tai Chi. Do Tai Chi, it's really good for getting your balance back. So I've done a lot of Tai Chi, and it's helped. It really has. I still feel dizzy most of the time, but I can, work through it, without, even though I'm feeling dizzy, I know how to do the things that I need to do. I wouldn't take up work as a circus tightrope walker anytime. I want to talk a little bit about, the change, that we talk about. And I think that there's an expectation that, that we make these changes in our lives, just like that. We buck up, get to it, put a smile on our face. And so I'm going to read this, which is called "Nobody Changes with a Glad Heart." What I miss most is being able to chew. All my life, eating was a passion. I used to eat constantly. The sheer enormity of my appetite. As soon as one meal was done, I'd march off to find another. There was never enough. Really, nothing was more satisfying than sidling up to a good meal and having at it. Tacking it methodically and watching it just disappear. The crunch, crunch, crunch. Oh, and the texture, juicy. Oh, God, eating was gratifying. Now, well, it's all liquid. Sip here, sip there. I would have been embarrassed to call it a meal in the old days. There's never any genuine urgency to it. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I seem to have lost the thread of my life. All I do is flit around. Everyone tells me the sense of passion will come back, just in a different way. Oh, okay, bucko, I say, tell me, what is there to be passionate about? Nectar? Please. And another thing, all that eating, I grew a lot. I mean, I grew fast, and it felt good, Grow from a small thing into a big, fat guy. My size was my accomplishment. Others would look at me and say, whoa, look at Mr. Big over there. Has he been chowing down or what? I had pride, dignity, sense of purpose. Well, that's all history. What have I got show for the last month? I'm tired, that's what. Should have left well enough alone. I know. Everybody always talks about the flying. That makes it worth it, right? Yeah, no. Frankly, it's terrifying. Unless the wind is really, really calm, I get blown all over the place. Holy shit, you can't imagine how many birds there are out there. I'll tell you, a straight shot through the air is no problem for them. And hiding, forget about it. Not with the outfit I have on now. Listen, I go back to hanging out on the solid ground in a New York minute. Inconspicuous, safe. Spinning the cocoon was the worst idea I ever had. I had no notion what I was getting into. Oh, I was warned. Many an elder tried to tell me, I was once like you are, they said. I laughed at them. I was an idiot. So here I am saying the same thing to you little guys. Stick to the milkweed leaves. It's a good life. You think metamorphosis sounds good? Talk to Kafka. I suspect that those butterflies out there maybe don't see that change in quite as romantic a way as we often see. We go through these changes, and I think nobody changes without some bumps, particularly the tough changes. I'd be interested in hearing what kinds of changes you guys feel like have happened in your life with the advent of a loss of your particular abilities. How has your life changed? Want to share?
And no fun anymore.
Ah, the joy, huh? Yeah, I hear you. That joie de vivre just disappears. That's hard. Yeah.
I was electrocuted and lost my whole right side feeling for 2 years.
Wow.
It ended in my mouth, and that was 5 years of the feeling back.
Mm-hmm.
But the falling, dizzy, tripping, trying to hold on to stuff and then dropping it all the time.
Yep.
Stick a needle in the side for a couple of years. It was that numb. It was
Boy,
horrible.
talk about, that sense of chance just having hit you.
Oh, overnight.
Yeah, yeah.
It happened stupidly, and I don't remember it, but it happened to me, and you just have to learn to deal with it somehow.
What was helpful for you? How did you?
I have a kid that keeps me very active.
Oh, yeah.
I had owned a motel and had a business to run, so I just kept working and trying to get feeling back and trying to not let people see that I was weak and
Uh-huh.
tripping and falling. I worked more.